Hi there, my name is Matt McGrath, and I'm the creator of ID10T Error, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics podcast.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. If you want to drop me a line, you can contact me at john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. On this episode, I chat with Matt McGrath about ID10T Error, version 2.0. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Google Podcasts. It's also available on the True North Country Comics channel on YouTube. I invite you to like and subscribe. Matt is a writer and marketing professional who lives in Toronto, Ontario. He currently works as a content writer specializing in educational marketing. He's also co-founder of the Toronto theatre production company Bygone Theatre. Matt's short comics have appeared in Gothic Tales of Haunted Futures for Renegade Arts Entertainment, Strange Romance Volume 3, A Soul Divided, Caged in Flesh for Red Stilo Media, and Called Into Being. His current project is a follow-up to his first self-published comic, ID10T Error, successfully funded on Kickstarter. ID10T Error Issue 2 picks up moments after the end of the first issue. The story goes like this. Bradley has failed. The AI, Bradley's greatest creation and mortal enemy, has outwitted him, kicked his ass, and escaped into the streets of Toronto. But more is at stake for Bradley than just carrying out his petty vendetta. The AI also contains a secret within its coding that, if it gets in the wrong hands, could destroy Bradley's life. Bradley must track it down, not just to enact his revenge, but also to ensure his own survival. Meanwhile, the AI hatches a plan to save himself and the life of his friend Burbo by uploading their consciousness into the virtual reality amusement park of Burboland. There, Bradley won't be able to reach or hurt them, that is, if he doesn't hunt them down first. And so, without further ado, here's my chat with Matt McGrath about ID10T Error version 2.0. So, Matt McGrath, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
I appreciate your time. Before we get started with the questions, I want to ask you, what's on your bedside reading table? What are you reading today?
I've got like a pile of books on my bedside reading table, probably like a foot or so high.
Wow.
So, I haven't been doing a lot of reading. I actually have a newborn right now. So
congrats. That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, she turned 3 months. Yeah, not a whole lot of reading going on. I have the time to like watch TV, like when she's sleeping on me, but like the sound of pages turning,
right.
A little, any slight movement or noise kind of sets her off. So,
sure.
Yeah, but I can tell you what's on that pile I got there. I actually got the Mr. Monster reprints left.
Oh, yeah.
Got all the Reckless books so far by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. And then I got a bunch of BPRD Hell on Earth hardcovers that I really want to dig into. So, that's on my to-read pile once I actually get a chance to do some reading.
Yeah, lots of good stuff. Look forward to reading, that's for sure. So we're here talking about your latest project, which is a follow-up called ID10T Error. I know we talked about this before, and before we get going, I just want to ask, what feedback did you get from the first issue?
Oh, so far, all positive feedback. Got a few reviews. I think my favorite review was from Pipe Dream Comics. They had like really nice things to say, and there was one line that said, ID10T Error is a, how do they phrase it? A torture porn version of Short Circuit. So,
there you go. That's pretty good.
It's very attention grabbing, right? Like, you hear that and you're immediately interested in what on earth is going on in this book. So, so far all good stuff, and I'm excited to put this one out in the world and see what people have to say about the follow up.
Yeah, that's my next question. So when we originally talked about this first book, it was a one-shot. It was labeled a one-shot. But I guess there was enough story there to continue on. I'm wondering, like, can you, without giving too much away, how does the story continue?
Yeah, so for the longest time, it was always just going to be a one-shot. The whole comic and project in itself is just a way to kind of get my feet wet in, making my own comics, self-publishing by myself. So I purposely made it a self-contained thing just to make it a lot more manageable to, I don't know, get started in the comic making world. But yeah, as soon as the Kickstarter launched, I just had more ideas. If you read the first book, it ends on kind of like an open-ended note, so there is room for a sequel there. And yeah, I basically just started off with like a couple of gags I thought would be funny for a follow-up, and then around those gags, I very slowly started to form a story. When I was out with my dog, walking my family, my mind would wander of what could happen next. So kind of after a few months of just like letting it stew in my head, I finally started writing it out. And this next issue is basically part 1 of 2 in this whole next chapter of the story. So there will be an issue 3 to kind of tie off this part of the story. And, hopefully we'll get there after we see how this Kickstarter does.
Sure. Now, I apologize. I should have asked right off the top. Could you sum up the initial story without giving too much away? Like, how would you give like a 1-sentence sort of synopsis of it?
Yeah, so it's kind of like a weird sci-fi version of Pinocchio. It's kind of got tones of like Dr. Frankenstein and his monster. So it's basically about this kind of disgruntled loner guy who spends years of his life in his basement kind of working on this very sophisticated AI robot. And the reason that he's creating like this highly sophisticated AI is not because he wants to use it to better mankind or to launch, us into the future. He just wants to create it so he can torture and kill it immediately. So yeah, that's where the story starts off. And then, of course, once his AI, he finally perfects the AI and it gains consciousness, the AI just wants to get the hell out of there and is only thinking of its own survival. So the story from there is kind of a cat and mouse game between Bradley, who is the evil genius, and the AI trying to outwit each other. And Bradley's trying to kill him and the AI is trying to get the hell out of there. So
Right. Yeah. Well, that's an intriguing story for sure. I wanted to ask you, were you able to get the same collaborators as you had before on the first issue?
I did, yeah. So that's very excited about that. Everybody's back, the whole team. So Ottavio Colino is back on doing the line art, which is great. And Kay Baird also back on colors, and Frank Sefcovic is back on letters. So whole team's back, which I'm really excited about.
Yeah, that's good. This time out, though, you guys had a bit of a shortcut, would you say, when it came to the creative process? You understood each other's sort of nuances. Did that help a little bit in this creation?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think also I was a little more experienced with the whole project management of creating a comic. Like I wasn't kind of figuring out how to do things as it went along, like the technical aspects. So in that sense, yeah, it went a lot quicker, a lot smoother. Yeah, I mean, people are also, still busy doing other projects. So in that sense, it takes a little bit more time. Yeah, so far the whole process, knock wood, has gone very smoothly. So we've got
good to hear.
We've got 10 pages in the can, so all done before the Kickstarter launches. So
nice.
Yeah, in good shape.
Good. And you just mentioned it. You're using Kickstarter again for this issue. So I'm wondering, are there any lessons you learned from the previous effort using Kickstarter that you can apply to this one?
For sure. I think I kind of have to put my marketing cap on a lot more for this one. So doing a lot more to market it even before the Kickstarter launches. Like we created this really cool video that I'm really excited about. It's kind of a motion comic teaser trailer, so it uses panels from the pages and kind of animates them slightly, and we got like music in the background, and I lend my voice to some of the dialogue and do some voice acting there. So yeah, a lot more promotion, just getting the whole project out there a lot more. Like I'm going to create a press release. I feel like is very important when the Kickstarter actually launches, doing a lot more outreach to different podcasts and news sites. And I'm also kind of thinking about maybe doing some paid advertising on Facebook. I'm kind of exploring that, see how much it's going to cost. Maybe just like experiment with it, see.
It's a
See how
lot of
much.
work.
Yeah,
People don't realize, it's one thing to make the project, but to promote it is another. So one of the things I was going to ask you, though, is in terms of promotion, have you thought about attending any conferences or festivals in promotion of the book?
I would love to. There's not a whole ton going on in Toronto right now. Also, just a little bit cautious because I got two unvaccinated
Hmm.
kids, so I'm like,
Right.
kind of have to weigh the pros and cons of going to a con, especially like I said, I have a newborn. So
Hmm.
hopefully, like in the summer, in the fall, there'll be more opportunities to go to cons. So
Right.
maybe not so much when I'm promoting the Kickstarter, but once the book is actually out and printed, yeah,
Hmm.
I would totally love to go out to cons and push that book. Another thing I just wanted to mention is for the first Kickstarter I did, the book was actually only digital. So it was released just digital. And for this Kickstarter, I'm going to be releasing the first book as a print book,
Ah.
and
Hmm.
same with the second issue. So both will be print this time.
Nice. Get
Yeah,
something in your hands and carry
exactly.
around with you. That's great. Now, you hinted at a third issue there. I don't know if you're committed to that yet, but do you see this story evolving and moving on as the characters sort of grow?
I think so. Yeah, it all depends on like I don't know, the reception. So I'm pretty committed to doing the third issue because this issue two that I'm launching the Kickstarter for ends on a cliffhanger. So I really want to finish out at least that part of the story, no matter what. And yeah, this whole, I guess, second chapter of the story also kind of ends on it can be self contained, like it has a final ending, but also room for more stories. So yeah, definitely there are ideas in my head to keep going further with it. And, the kind of mission statement, I kind of came up with it. I don't know, when I was thinking about issue two, is each subsequent story is going to be bigger and crazier and just kind of up the stakes. So for issue one, it was very much a chamber drama. It just really took place in two locations, a basement and kind of the office of Bradley. So yeah, for issue two, it's a lot bigger. Like this whole craziness that Bradley's created spills out into the streets of Toronto. So they're getting around everywhere, and yeah, they're traveling all over the city, kind of trying to kill each other, basically. And then yeah, for if there's a third story, it's going to be even bigger than that.
Yeah, that's one thing I was going to pick up on is you sent me some of the original art and some of the cover as well, and noticed that the Toronto has a big focus there. Is that something that you planned on doing, having the city as a character, or was that just happenstance?
Kind of, sort of. I just doesn't have to be set in any specific city per se. So I thought, I'm from Toronto. Why not just have it set in Toronto? Yeah, that's also kind of like a personal choice I've made with my comics. Like, whenever I can, I want it to be set in Canada and just have a very Canadian feel to it, Canadiana feel to it. Yeah, so we got so many comics and movies and TVs that are set in New York and
Right. Yeah.
Chicago or LA or London or whatever, and now we've got after last month with Turning Red, we've got like maybe
Mm-hmm.
two or three set in Toronto. So
Sure.
I'm just doing my little part to make Toronto kind of sort of. I just doesn't have to be set in any specific city per se. So I thought, I'm from Toronto. Why not just have it set in Toronto? Yeah, that's also kind of like a personal choice I've made with my comics. Like, whenever I can, I want it to be set in Canada and just have a very Canadian feel to it, Canadiana feel to it. Yeah, so we got so many comics and movies and TVs that are set in New York and
Right. Yeah.
Chicago or LA or London or whatever, and now we've got after last month with Turning Red, we've got like maybe
Mm-hmm.
two or three set in Toronto. So
Sure.
I'm just doing my little part to make Toronto a central part of, I don't know, storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Oh,
trying
it
to
makes
feature the
sense.
city. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. So, where do you recommend that people go online to find the Kickstarter, this current one?
You could go and back the actual Kickstarter itself. So the easiest way is probably to go to my Twitter, which is Stupid Matt. So that's stupid with two O's. And then, yeah, if you want to go to the Kickstarter website, you can just type in ID 10T error, and you should find it there.
Thanks to Matt for the chat. You can discover more about Matt on Twitter at stupidmatt. That's STOOPID _Matt. And you can find ID10T error on Kickstarter.com. And thanks to you for listening to the True North Country Comics podcast. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to and like this podcast on Apple Podcasts, and please leave a good rating. Also check out the TrueNorthCountryComics.com website and follow along on Twitter at True North Comics. True North Country Comics is now on YouTube. Please like and subscribe to that video channel. Please send your feedback to John at TrueNorthCountryComics.com. Thanks again for listening, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics Podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2022.